Good morning. First of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today, which is thank you to Kelsey and Alex for organizing this event. I want to thank my peers for encouraging me to participate, and I'd like to thank my family and all of our family and friends who are here in the audience today. It really means a lot to us. Before I share the research I've been doing with you, I'm going to start by showing you a short video clip. It's a clip that in some ways is the reason I'm here today. Some volume.
And every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Reeling still and subject to endlessly replayed videos of death and disaster, President Bush's words of self-righteous anger and affirmation no doubt soothed a nation in shock. Al-qaeda had deliberately and indiscriminately attacked the United States. There were over 3,000 casualties, billions of dollars of damage, and the complete or partial destruction of two of the most symbolic buildings in our country. Of course we had to respond. The world had to be on our side. We had to stand up to evil. We had to declare a global war on terror. Over a decade, 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and an unknown number of CIA operations later, al-Qaeda continues to operate. Although the U.S. has been successful in its operations to pursue al-Qaeda's top leadership, the past 5 years have witnessed a proliferation of al-Qaeda light groups in northern Africa, Somalia, and most recently in Mali. Even though President Obama has eschewed the phrase, the U.S. is still very much fighting the war on terror and losing it. But this does not have to be. Since beginning my education with my bachelor's degree at Brandeis 6 years ago and continuing at USC, I've studied international relations, American politics, ethnic conflict, intercultural communications, public diplomacy, and so much more. And after all of these studies, I have come to a surprising conclusion. Al-Qaeda can be beaten in 3 easy steps. So what's step 1? This is what you all want to know. Step 1, know thy enemy. Though hard to define, terrorism seems easy to spot. One may use the Supreme Court's famous pornography test to explain how most people understand the concept. I know it when I see it. The problem with this formulation is twofold. First, it's subjective. The aphorism, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, sort of explains how. But secondly, it's devoid of objective criteria by which scholars or lay people can classify the world around them. It doesn't help to not have a real definition. And the definitions of terrorism that do exist tend to either be too specific, such that certain terrorists wouldn't even be included, or so vague as to construe even a polemicist as a terrorist. So even though we've all been terrified by Tom Friedman, I'm not sure he's a terrorist. The lack of acceptance of a single definition hampered my research. So I formulated my own, which informs every aspect of this presentation. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through the exact definition, but if you're interested in it, I'm happy to share it with you later. The power of a terrorist is not merely a reflection of materiel, but rather a function of the target audience's response to threats and violence. Moreover, action taken by terrorists can produce different outcomes among different groups. That is, a single act of terrorism can simultaneously attract the sympathy of important local constituencies and repel, co-opt, or coerce civil society and the global public. Some definitions of terrorism insist that the use of force or threat of force must be indiscriminate. But terrorists are often very discriminate in whom they target or how much damage is done. For instance, the Basque terrorist group ETA informs the authorities before its bombs goes off so that they can evacuate the area in danger. Their goal is to ensure that the public knows that they can plant bombs, not to harm people. For terrorists, the intended result of hard power tactics has more to do with expressing identity and compelling action from its opponents that would discredit them rather than securing tactical victory. So now, with a basic understanding of what a terrorist is, we need to understand who al-Qaeda is. What is al-Qaeda? Al-Qaeda is a transnational network of is a transnational terrorist network of Salafi Islamists with the goal of engendering a pan-Islamic revolutionary movement that would result in the creation of a new caliphate, a unitary Islamic polity. Al-Qaeda's grand strategy is to use violence against the citizens of nations that are supportive of the United States or repressive of al-Qaeda supporters in order to catalyze a larger conflict between Islam and the rest. In order to do this, al-Qaeda requires motivated foot soldiers and publicity for its actions. Al-Qaeda has taken advantage of the internet revolution to spread its message to a larger audience. By building a digital network through which to disseminate its message, al-Qaeda has been able to increase its base of public support from which it draws its operative force. Without people and attention, al-Qaeda would be unable to launch the violent attacks that have any significant impact. Thus, the most important source of al-Qaeda's power is its ability to communicate messages of attraction. It is clear what differentiates a terrorist network from other sources of violent conflict. The impact of the attack far exceeds the sum of the damage. Bin Laden understood that al-Qaeda could only win by drawing the U.S. into larger conflicts in the Middle East that would engender two results: greater Muslim resistance and unity on the one hand, and significant costs, financial, political, and personal, to the United States on the other. Thus, President Bush was inadvertently doing exactly what bin Laden hoped when he declared the global war on terror. Understanding what a terrorist network is, how it operates, and the nature of its power are essential first steps to defeating al-Qaeda. So now you ask, what's step two? Step two is to target the target audience and ignore the terrorist. As I've said, the efficacy of al-Qaeda is not a function of its ability to destroy, but rather a function of its ability to attract, co-opt, and repel target audiences. Al-Qaeda is not defined by the individuals who make up its network, but by the identity engendered in its strategy. Thus, even if one were to kill every single member of al-Qaeda, it would not be equivalent to destroying al-Qaeda. At any point in time, any person could perpetrate an act of terrorist and call themselves al-Qaeda, and to the global public it would feel the same. There would be no obvious difference. Thus, efforts to defeat al-Qaeda should be focused on its target audiences, not the perpetrators themselves. In any action, al-Qaeda has three target audiences: the victims, the supporters, and everybody else. A robust approach to counterterrorism that is focused on the target audience must include a commitment to public diplomacy and development, including a campaign to educate the global public on the nature of terrorists. Moreover, facilitating exchanges between potential supporters and possible victims of al-Qaeda would make it more difficult for al-Qaeda to define the two audiences as diametrically opposed. It would be impossible to convince people that they should kill every one of the other. Finally, al-Qaeda fills its ranks with those who have the most to lose, or least to lose, almost entirely young men with no job prospects. Investing in foreign aid and promoting good governance in countries with high risk of youth radicalization would go a long way towards starving al-Qaeda of its base of support. Including these public diplomacy strategies with traditional hard power-based counterterrorism tactics is the best short-term and long-term approach. Now, some of my critics will say that neither killing everyone who frightens us nor providing unlimited aid to those who need it can prevent violence, that there will always be terrorism. And those critics would be correct, which brings me to step three. Accept that life is unpredictable and sometimes tragic. As English political theorist Thomas Hobbes famously concluded, life is nasty, brutish, and short. Tragedy, pain, and loss are a natural part of life that can never be foreseen or controlled. For others to prey on the fear of the many for the benefit of themselves is wrong. Yet resorting to violence will always be attractive to those who are disillusioned and fanatical. But the effect of violence doesn't correlate to its strength. Our response is their power. Rather than fight only, We must commit ourselves to the slow and hard work of development and diplomacy, even as we all come to accept that which we cannot control. Until we, the global public, can accept the unpredictable, chaotic, and yes, occasionally violent reality of life, the terrorists will always win. Ultimately, this can be expressed axiomatically. Terrorism is a phenomenon that must be managed rather than a problem to be solved. Thank you very much.